It's now 4:30. This is the time for the November 25th, this is the time for the January 27th, 2015 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission. Could I have a motion, please, concerning the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda. If you have the right agenda.
Well, I do, but my iPad had the wrong one. Okay. Good. Is there a second to that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Could I have a similar motion, please, concerning the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Question before I have a second. I'd like to have an item for further discussion on the consent agenda, the collection procedure.
Okay.
That could be removed this time.
Okay. If we remove the collection procedure from the consent agenda, are you willing to give us a second?
Yes.
Was that your motion?
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Do you want to discuss that now?
Yeah, that could.
Why don't we? Nancy, are you available?
Or maybe more in commentary. Excuse me. More basic, some comments and observations here. When I was looking at the procedure, I noticed that there is a 40% fee that is retained by the collection agency, and I would recommend periodic review of those agencies to see what their performance is, as far as how much are they collecting on an annual basis, and then maybe do some checking as far as with other agencies to see if they can give us a better rate, or to see what they would anticipate the collection rate of those people. And I realize that these people left the area, and I talked to Nancy and Bill a little bit about this here for it, so it's just an observation or suggestion that may be something that we should do on a regular basis.
Okay, Nancy Lund, Admin and Finance Manager, and as Commissioner Regala said, we did discuss this afternoon, and in fact, we'd had a person from a different collection agency in our offices last week, so we had a chance to discuss briefly with that person. It has been a few years since we went out on a request for proposals for collection services, and we'll try to get that scheduled to go through that process again, you know, hopefully sometime this year, and we'll take a look at that. And Commissioner Regala also gave us some other good ideas that we'll take a look at and see, as far as automating some more bill processes or getting people to sign up for e-bills and things like that. So we will take a look at some of those options. Okay. Thanks for those ideas.
And then one of the agencies that I had some experience with was the Credit Bureau. I don't know if they've ever contacted us, but they have a pretty good link with the reporting and then the collecting side, which may be another option as far as for agencies to use or contact.
Okay, we'll make sure we include those in that process when we do the RFPs.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. That having been said, could we...
I move to approve 8E.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think
And a
John
second.
seconded it. I heard him.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any customers to be heard or recognitions, Bill?
No.
Okay. Any old business?
No.
Members of the City Council, what have you got to report?
Not a whole lot. Trying to think off the top of my head, we had a retreat. I don't believe anything came up that really necessarily pertained to more public service. So yeah, I guess my report is
Short and sweet is what you're telling me. Thank you. Members of the Public Service Commission, anything to report?
Not I.
Okay. Mr. General Manager.
There's just 3 items on the general manager's report, and they're more for just informational type of news. You know, we did have sent something out to Oakport Township, and sometimes it's nice to repeat it on television here, but that we're, of course, January 1st occurred and the annexation of Oakport Township occurred. However, it will take us some time to acquire the electric service territory rights, and we will begin negotiating with Red River Valley Cooperative and Xcel Energy in the next few months. But we don't expect to provide that service in 2015. it more likely will be 2016 that we would do that. So other than that, if there's questions, we could answer any questions if you'd like.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. That brings us down to item 9, which is to award bids for the replacement of the 115 kV circuit breakers at the Moorhead DOE tap station. Bill, are you
Yeah,
speaking to
this
this?
is, Travis Schmidt should come up and talk about this a little bit, just replacing some aging equipment, and Travis can explain that.
Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. Basically, this is the award of the two 115 breakers that we have at our DOE substation. Along with that, we're doing a little bit of other work within the substation to clean up some aging infrastructure there as well. So we're fixing our cable troughs and some vaults that are starting to deteriorate that runs the control cables through it. We got a successful bid from Paradigm. We did have to rebid due to some discrepancies once we received the original bid in. We weren't comfortable with how everything was being completed, so we went out and fixed the specifications and rebid it and came back with what staff was comfortable with.
Okay. Any questions for Travis?
I'm familiar with several different Paradigm companies.
Okay.
Could you share a little bit more about who they are?
Sure. Paradigm Enterprises is they're actually located right south of Moorhead, about a mile from the actual substation itself. They've done work for us before. They're actually a really good company to work with, so I'm definitely happy to have them get the bid.
Who are the principals?
What?
Who are the principals?
Glenn Morkin and John Cherney, if I remember right.
And so they're an electrical
Yep.
construction company, do electrical work and
Electrical and
Substations.
transmission and substation work. They actually were the company that completed the Opportunity Substation for us as well.
Any further questions, John? Any questions, Les? Could I have a motion concerning item 9, please?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That brings us down to item 10, which is to approve an agreement with the West Central Minnesota Communities Action Incorporated for Affordable Housing Weatherization Program. Bill?
Yeah, and this is, if I could ask Dennis Eisenbrown, Energy Services Manager, to come forward. He can explain this item.
Dennis Eisenbrown, Energy Services Manager. Part of the state requirements for energy conservation includes that we include customers that meet a specific income threshold, and that we provide a certain percentage of our operating revenues to them in terms of some type of functionality that will save energy in particular. And so what we've done is we use appliances that we apply because it's something that we can easily measure the energy savings for. The West Central folks are people that work with the people that we are targeting. Their income levels are specified in this in the document here, and it's all basically determined by the state of Minnesota. And the program that we're using is called the Low Income Weatherization Program. That's the umbrella program for this, and that determines the income levels, and that's what the West Central folks use to determine which clients are qualified to receive appliances. And then we have a certain threshold based on, basically it's a 3-year average, and we take 2% of a 3-year average of what we spent on residential income or revenue, residential electric income, and 0.2% of that is what's spent on this program. And that's a state requirement.
Okay. Any questions for Dennis? Les?
How long have we been working with these folks? I think it's been quite a while.
I mean, I've been the Energy Services Manager, I think, since 2009 or something like that. We've been working with him ever since then, and I'm sure before that as well, so.
And you're satisfied with it?
Very much so, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I move approval.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. It brings us to item 12, which is to approve specifications and
11.
authorize, pardon?
11.
11, excuse me. Approve the 2014 Economic Development Incentive Payment to Pactiv Corporation. Thank you.
And Dennis will explain this one a bit too. This is an economic development incentive program and you have a policy, it's attached, and Dennis can kind of go over the details, but certainly ask questions about this, because this is a unique and beneficial program for companies to expand or locate in Moorhead.
Right, yeah, this has been a very successful program, in particular for Pactiv. They're really the only customer that we have right now that's under this program. It's meant to be a 5-year incentive to give them credit for the incremental production that they've added to their facility. They've done a great job with this. They've maintained the paperwork properly, and they've always been at or above the levels that we require. It is a 5-year program, and this is really the last full year of the program for Pactiv. And their incentive will end in June of this year. I'm not sure exactly what day, and we'll work on the exact detail on that. But the rebate ends the midterm this year, or mid-year. So it'll be the end of their 5-year program.
Let me ask you this, what kind of additions did Pactiv put in their plant?
Well, they've added on building, but they've also brought in some of these, what they call the large matrix machines. So they've increased production significantly at their site, and they've added the requisite number of full-time employees as well. I believe the minimum is 10. I think their number is much higher than that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Bill?
Not a question, but another clarification, not clarification, but a comment, because they were looking, and we did approve a couple of years ago an expansion, I believe after they had that fire,
Right.
but they haven't done that at this point, or they even released themselves from that.
Yeah, right. We actually went through the whole process. They were going to put another addition onto their plant, and we actually had a second economic development incentive package put together for them, and it was approved by the commission. But they came back to us, I don't know, 6 months or something. They said it just wasn't going to happen, so we basically have tabled it. And so that one, so if they ever did decide to put on this expansion or another one, we would have them go through the process all over again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I have a motion concerning this? Bill?
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if you can share this, but of the $162,000,
Yeah.
does that represent a 10% of their total utility bill, or do you have any idea what that works out to be?
Can I say?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say it's roughly half, if not, maybe a little bit more so. It's a significant part, so, yeah.
Okay. Les?
Dennis, do we have any other companies in the community that have expressed any interest in a similar incentive?
We've had maybe a couple nibbles, and I don't feel comfortable saying who. It's just basically when people are negotiating these things, it's something you want to keep confidential. But I don't have any what I would call active applications, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, no
I've had people
serious.
ask about it, but nothing. I don't have nothing active per se.
Thank you.
And we have very strict requirements
We
in
do.
terms of qualifying for this, do we not?
Right. I mean, there's a certain level of power production. They have to have a certain load factor. They have to have a certain, and then a certain number of full-time employees. We have 2 levels of rebate. There's a lower level where you actually get a half a cent instead of a penny per kilowatt hour. But that has lower requirements, but they do have to meet them. And as I said before, Pactiv submits a report every year annually that tells us how they've met those numbers every year, and they've met them very well. So,
Okay.
I move to approve item 11.
Thank you, Les. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Now we'll go to item 12, which is to approve specifications and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2014 water treatment and wastewater treatment chemicals. This is fairly standard. I don't know if there's
This is-
anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the ordinary. Chris Knutson can address what this is and just give you kind of a general overview of what it's for. I asked him about wastewater treatment chemicals this morning, so that was interesting, because we don't run the wastewater utility, so I did ask that question, so you might be curious about
Like in
that.
why are we approving the wastewater? Okay.
Right.
Christopher Knutson, Water Division Manager. So yeah, this is a fairly standard item that we do annually for the advertisement for bids for all of our water treatment chemicals. We have probably 20 water treatment chemicals that we add. In addition to those chemicals, also we work with wastewater for their respective chlorine bidding they don't use very much of it, so it works out better if they kind of cooperate with us in terms of bidding for annual chemical usage. So,
Okay. Any questions for Chris?
I move approval.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. That brings us down to item 13, which is to approve the 2015 Pay Equity Compliance Report. Bill, Nancy, who's going to speak to this?
Nancy can speak to this one. This is a requirement of the Minnesota Local Government Pay Equity Act of 1984, and something that we have to comply with. And Nancy's the one who fills out the forms and talks about this, so.
Nancy Lund, Admin and Finance Manager. Dating back to 1984, there was Minnesota legislation in place that requires all public employers, which Moorhead Public Service is, to have pay equity within the organization so that they are paying fair levels of compensation to employees doing the same value of work. So in 1984, we partnered with many, many other public employers and had developed a system, a pay equity reporting system or an internal ranking system to use to meet the pay equity requirements. We've had that structure in place since the mid-'80s, and quarterly or every 3 years we're required to report our pay, our internal rankings or our points for our employees to the state of Minnesota, the pay ranges, and we're required to comply so that we make sure that we're not in, that we do have that equity between all the positions or classifications within MPS. We have always complied. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, we had probably some tough negotiations with some of our collective bargaining agreements to make sure we did come into compliance with that system. And so since that time, things have been fairly standard. Our compliance has been just a routine occurrence since the late 80s, early 90s. And so this year, we're due for that filing again. We are also, if you remember, currently in the midst of a classification compensation system, which will update our internal ranking system that's been in place since the early 80s. So we're going through that process right now. So as we do that process and the commission approves that new system, we will also have to report that change to pay equity the next time we report also. So
Okay.
they'll be watching us.
Any questions for Nancy?
Make motion to accept.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. We'll now be going into closed executive session to discuss labor negotiation strategies, which are allowable under the laws of the state of Minnesota, and also to discuss real estate acquisition strategies and negotiations, which are allowable pursuant to the statutes of the state of Minnesota. We're in closed session. We are now back in open session. Casey, I believe there is an action that we're going to take relative to Oakport Township. Would you?
I have that.
Oh, you've got it? Okay.
I am perfectly capable.
Yes,
of
you are.
reading. I move that the water tower property agreement between the city of Moorhead, Moorhead Public Service, and Oakport Township contingent upon final approval by Attorney John Boulder
Be approved?
be approved.
Okay, is there a second?
I thought I said I moved to approve.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Our meeting's adjourned. Thank you.